Now is Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Senator, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Morning.
So I want to ask you to educate our viewers, help us better understand the pushback. First of all, do you think President Trump's message to the Republican conference will sink in with 24 hours to go before this vote?
You know, the thing we've always been unified on, all Republicans, all stripes of Republicans have wanted repeal. We just haven't been unified on Paul Ryan's plan to replace. A lot of his replacement to us looks a lot like Obamacare, maybe Obamacare Lite. And so we're just not for that. We're not for subsidies and taxes and mandates and insurance company bailouts. We're just not for that. So I don't think there's enough votes for them to pass it. My hope is that they will pull the bill today sometime, and that when they pull the bill, that we'll have a serious conversation with conservatives at the table and we'll come to an agreement. We want to come to an agreement, and that agreement is for complete repeal. If you only partially repeal this and you leave the insurance mandates in place, the insurance premiums are going to continue to skyrocket. And people will say, well, what did you guys do? We let you win the election so you would fix it, and you haven't fixed it. The Ryan plan will not fix it, and insurance premiums will still rise if we pass that plan alone.
Okay, so then you're not really controlling the cost, which was one of your most important issues there. Make sure to get the cost of health care down. What do you want to see? Let's say they pull the bill today. You'd like to see them pull the bill. If they were to pull it, what other important changes do you want in this bill or in a new repeal, like, for example, Medicaid expansion, these tax credits, also troublesome to you? Give me two things that the GOP needs to do to make this vote better, to make this bill better, to get a yes vote from you.
We need to have something in the bill that offers hope to people who don't have insurance. The biggest thing that we can offer people who don't have insurance to get lower prices is joining a co-op or an association. So that needs to be part of this bill. I think it actually could be ruled by the chair of the Senate to be eligible under the budget rules. That's why a lot of us are promoting that Vice President Pence should take the chair and he should make the decision on what is reconcilable under the budget rules. We think there's a lot more that can be done in this bill to repeal insurance regulations and to allow people to join buying groups to bring the prices down.
Look, I know you were walking around with a copier a couple of weeks ago, basically saying, where is this bill? Let people see it. But, you know, people are scratching their heads this morning and saying, why is this happening now in the 11th hour? You guys have had 7 years to come up with a repeal and replace for Obamacare. You've been telling the country for 7 years, this is a disaster. It needs to be repealed and replaced. How come all of a sudden now all the surprises that, we don't like Paul Ryan's plan?
Well, the interesting thing is we voted dozens of times, in the House at least, they voted dozens of times to repeal Obamacare. But they didn't vote on Paul Ryan's plan dozens of times. They kept voting on a clean repeal. And then at the 11th hour, he decided that he was going to keep parts of Obamacare. He was going to keep parts of the taxes. He was going to keep subsidies. He was going to keep an individual mandate. But even more insultingly, you have to pay the insurance company. And he's keeping significant amount of funds that will be funneled in as an insurance subsidy. So that's not what we ran on. That's not what we voted for. So if there is a fault to be had, it's in the leadership putting forward something that is not what we ran on.
Why? Why would he put something on with members to make sure that he had the votes and the buy-in?
I think he checked with some members, and those were the members who do want Obamacare Lite. So, you know, their conservatives don't want it. The conservative grassroots across the country that showed up at Tea Party rallies and I think got this House majority elected, they don't want it either. But I think that there's a little tone deafness up here. They're not realizing, but I say go home and listen to people on both sides of the equation. Nobody likes the bill.
So if they pull the bill today, that obviously means no House vote tomorrow.
Yeah, but there's not a rush to do it in one day. I think we could have, couple of weeks of discussion. The most important thing is that conservatives should have a seat at the table, and we shouldn't be voting on Obamacare Lite, and there should be hope for people. There's no hope for anybody in this. We're taking away their government subsidies and replacing it with half as many government subsidies. That's not going to make anybody happy. There needs to be something good in the bill that we could go home and say millions of people will now be able to join a co-op and get out of the disastrous individual market and get a better price and be protected from pre-existing conditions. That's something positive to run on. Instead, we're saying, we're going to give you half as much as Obamacare gives you. And I think that's not going to sell with either side.
Yeah, but I mean, have you been happy with the tweaks that they've made? I mean, they've gotten rid of the taxes, right?
Yeah, for some good, they have introduced some good changes, but for every good one, they introduce a bad one as well. So they increased the subsidies by $75 billion. They did make the tax cut come quicker, but why is it we're having to beg Republicans to cut taxes? We all promised to be against the Obamacare taxes, to vote against them, and we're now having to beg Republicans. That's their compromise, is that they're compromising with those of us who say repeal the Obamacare taxes, all of them.
Yeah.
So they're repealing more of them and quicker, but they're still leaving the tax on good insurance plans. So anybody that has great insurance in this country, we're going to punish you, or the bill will punish you with the tax.
Yeah, you make a lot of good points, Senator. Let me ask you this. How much responsibility should you take, should Mark Meadows take, the entire Freedom Caucus take, if in fact the whole policy agenda of the Trump administration is now busted because of this? We all know how high the stakes are. We all saw what happened in the markets yesterday, down 237 points on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, because investors decided, you know what? This is not happening. There's a backup on the health care bill. That means a backup on tax reform. This agenda that people just voted for is now a bust. What happens then?
I have never thought this either or situation. I don't think either we take the Ryan plan or we get nothing. I think if the Ryan plan has to be pulled down, which I'm pretty sure it's going to be pulled down today or tomorrow, when it is pulled down, we will continue the debate. We will continue the discussion. And in fact, the real negotiation begins after they pull the Ryan plan. So if they will pull the Ryan plan, conservatives don't want to walk away from the table. We want a seat at the table, and we want a real repeal of Obamacare, the thing we all ran on.
All right, so let's say you're right. They pull the plan today or tomorrow. What's the timeline in terms of getting everybody back in the room? Do you still have the same time that you get something out on health care by Easter and you get tax reform out by August?
I think because we went the wrong direction on this for so long, and the House leadership just keeps plowing ahead. They're still plowing ahead as we speak. They think they're going to win. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. The way we count the votes, we think there's enough conservatives to stop them. There's actually a few moderates also that are no's on this as well. So we think it's going to take a little longer, but I still fully expect that we could get to tax reform by the fall. For goodness sakes, this is not rocket science. We should be able to, repeal Obamacare this spring and also then do tax reform in the fall. So I think it still all happens, but it may take, a couple more weeks to iron out our differences.
So you're good with having tax reform, though, have no impact on markets or economy in 2017, and it becomes a 2018 story?
That what does? Tax reform?
Yeah, tax reform.
I think tax reform ends up, I would really like to get to it this year. I just think practically speaking, it'll be this fall.
This fall, meaning it's probably a 2018 piece of business, right? The impact happens in 18, not 17.
Yeah, but I think a lot of tax changes that happen this year probably, the way taxes are, they usually happen prospectively, not retrospectively. So I'm not as concerned about that. I am concerned about doing the right thing on Obamacare, but also doing the right thing on taxes. There's also a big chunk of a tax cut in Obamacare that people need to be aware of, and they need to say, you know what, you want this? You want these tax cuts? We do too, but why don't we go for a more conservative vision of health care in order to get these tax cuts through? All
right, so if we see a headline that they're pulling the Ryan plan, we should view that positively then?
I think so.
Senator, it's good to have you on the program this morning. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Senator Rand Paul joining us there.